She advises at the Ahimsa Center at the University of California, as well as the Unilever Center for Ethics at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She oversees a monthly newspaper and also has published several books. She received several awards nationally and internationally, and among them are the Padma Bhushan Award, which is amongst the highest civilian awards from Government of India in 2002, and the Community of Christ International Award in 2007. ElaGhandi's mission in life has been to promote Gandhian ideas and a culture of non-violence. Her work is about creating the conditions for non-violence to exist across societies. The Mahatma became to symbolize a kind of spiritual and ethical center that brought together religious and political struggles. The Mahatma's life and example taught her that politics is more than just about power. It's about giving outward expression to certain basic and ethical as well as spiritual ideals. CANRAD's hosting of ElaGhandi is a first official visit to the NMMU. We hope that ElaGhandi's presence and sharing of her wisdom will inspire the staff and the students toward promoting social cohesion at the NMMU and toward building the non-racial democratic society we all hope for. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I now welcome Chancellor ElaGhandi to the stage.
Thank you. Mr. Director of Ceremonies, with young students here, Professor Derek Swartz, Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Nachul Wana, the Dean, Mr. Alan, Professor Alan Zinn, Dean of Law, Dean of Health Sciences, members of the 1860 Legacy Foundation, other members of the community, academics present, students present, friends, and colleagues. I really thank you for inviting me here. I really enjoyed my stay in Port Elizabeth. I almost feel like I am, does one say Port Elizabethian? Whatever the terminology, but I feel very much at home here. What we have witnessed in recent months is indeed sad. We are a country that captured the moral high ground for its outstanding peaceful transfer from apartheid to a democratic dispensation, for the wonderful manner in which the Truth and Reconciliation Inquiry was carried out, and for the peacemaking efforts carried out in the continent after we attained our liberation. South Africa is also a country that has been able to produce 4 Nobel Peace Prize laureates. So what has gone wrong? We have the most radical labor laws and policies that affirm the rights of workers to a living wage, the rights of workers to basic conditions of service, and to fair treatment on the factory floor. Yet, in the past decade, we have seen an increase in worker dissatisfaction, and at the same time, we see the gap between the wealthy and the poor has increased tremendously. The United Nations measure in terms of differences in national income equality as measured by the National Gini coefficient, which is a number between 0 and 1, where 0 corresponds to perfect equality and 1 to absolute inequality. In this calculation, South Africa's income is rated by the United Nations as 0.578. South Africa has just over 4 million unemployed people who are work seekers. Now, I know there's a dispute in the figures, but the people who are actually seeking work, that's 4 million, according to a report in the Mail and Guardian based on Stats South Africa survey in the first quarter of 2010. Within this situation then, is it not true that workers occupy a position of privilege because they at least have employment and an income? Some may disagree. If we cast our minds back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we will recall that workers experienced much hardships, as at that time among the African community in particular, there was an unemployment rate of almost 80%. For them, things have changed for the better. However, for the other population groups, as we begin to share the unemployment burden, it is becoming more difficult. Similarly, with students and communities, the burden of deprivation and access to resources has decreased, and people are now much better off than under apartheid. However, the other race groups who enjoyed privileges, albeit Indians and coloreds did not enjoy as much privileges as the white community did, the situation has become difficult. In addition to this, it must also be remembered that the cost of living too has gone up tremendously in the past 20 years. But returning to the issue of our protest actions in the recent months and years, I want to again refer to the past practices and compare them to the present. Workers, students, and communities went out door to door in the residential areas to religious institutions, had community meetings, produced leaflets, and had demonstrations, and it was through these means that they informed the public of the legitimacy of their demands and the evil that they were confronting. I think when Mr. Swart spoke about the anger that the students had then, they did have a lot of anger, but instead of just going and expressing that anger, they first went around and canvassed public opinion and informed and educated people. This education or information dissemination campaign seems to have died in recent years. Workers and students no longer consider it important to obtain community support, with the result that few people really know the facts about the various demonstrations that are taking place all over the country. And I'll just cite a simple example of what happened in UKZN just recently, about 4 days ago. There was a rumor that the hostel in which the students were living was going to be privatized. And the students demonstrated, and part of that demonstration was burning the cafeteria. Now, their parents don't know, other people don't know why they did this, why they were demonstrating. It was a spontaneous action, and they just took that action. In the past, we would have canvassed our parents, we would have canvassed communities, we would have got their support, and by getting their support, we would have been successful in the campaign that we have. In a non-violent way, but it's that support, that getting together, the unity, that would ensure that our actions were successful. Sadly, even if the demands are legitimate, there are many who are not too happy about the situation, especially when loved ones suffer in hospitals, children miss school, and community suffers without essential services. While the question asked is whose fault is it? Is it the government and the authorities responsible, or is it the workers and students who are callous and violent? The government not coming to the table with a fair proposal the universities not meeting the demands of the students, and local authorities not providing services, are they the reason for the violent actions we see? Is the anger we see fueled by something else that eludes us, or is it because of intransigence from the government, the authorities, and businesses? Benjamin Pogrund, a former deputy editor of the Rand Daily Mail, presently living in Israel but visiting South Africa at present, wrote in the Sunday Tribune 2 weeks ago, during more than 50 years as a journalist, and I'm quoting him, during more than 50 years as a journalist, I have reported or heard about every possible human vileness in dealing with other human beings. Now in Johannesburg, in the actions of the striking workers, I have found a new low in human behavior. Quoting the Gauteng Premier Nampula Mokonyane, he wrote about the plight of 53 premature babies left unattended in a locked ward in a hospital because striking workers refused to allow nursing staff to attend to the babies. He further wrote a story of nurses who were violently prevented from going to work by striking workers, and a story of a person who wanted to visit her dying father and was prevented from visiting him. Other reports from people have revealed similar behavior and the anger and frustration of the community against the striking workers and their behavior. Did the striking workers have the sympathy and support of the community? It does not seem so. In anger, Pogrund concludes, no South African has the right to point a moral finger at Israel, or for that matter, any other fraught conflict in the world. South Africans must first cleanse themselves of the moral stain of the premature babies. In contrast, in the Sunday papers of last weekend, Terry Bell, a labor analyst, wrote, and I quote, "The public sector strike should never have happened, a dispute that could have been settled without acrimony and disruption. We have seen over nearly a month how the negotiations were conducted and the way in which the strike unfolded has done damage both to the government and the unions. However, the primary responsibility for the confusion and occasional chaos must rest with the government." So in contrast to Pogrund, Bell lays the blame squarely in the lap of the government. He does not speak of or address the issue of the violence that unfolded and the behavior of the strikers. But on the other hand, in letters to the editor, writer after writer condemned the actions of the strikers. To quote one, and I quote, "The actions of striking workers can never be justified. Turning away sick patients, beating learners, trying to study, lives must never be used as bargaining tools." And these kinds of letters go on. Comments on the radio and television shows all indicate the frustration of the community with the workers. But a common thread through all these articles, letters, and comments is the recognition that something needs to be done by the authorities, be they universities or government or business, to resolve the issues rapidly. It is clear that communities, societies, government, countries, and the international community need to take action to reduce the huge gap between the rich and the poor. Gandhiji said that non-violence was not possible without achieving an equal society. But while expressing radical thought in terms of the economy, Gandhiji rejected the idea of